Hello, welcome to Module 7 lecture on global supply chains. I hope that your readings this week gave you some insight. I'm just going to cover some of the highlights that I think that you should take away from this week. So let's get started. So there are reasons why you go global, right? And one of them, obviously, is to increase revenue. Open up more markets, grow market share. You want to grow beyond your competition, obtain accessibilities to markets so that you can have some components from their local supply chains that may help you. Another objective would be to achieve economies of scale, take advantage of production capacity. Perhaps you can find a better way to produce the product. Reduce direct costs. A lot of people think of globalization in this aspect. Take advantage of lower labor costs or real estate expenses. But that's not the only one. Advanced technology, reduce energy requirements, reducing the distance, changing the mode of transportation. As I said, nearshoring is becoming a big thing in today's supply chain. You want to try to take advantage of differences in production requirements, obtain access to advanced technology that may not be available to what you have. Obtain access to specialized expertise or language skills. Maybe you have a specialized product. If you think about Boeing and the engines that go into the plane, some of those are Rolls-Royce. So Rolls-Royce would have that particular expertise. Tax liability is a big one. To reduce tax liabilities and value-added taxes. Tariffs is another one. Reduce market access uncertainty. Made some of the uncertainty around the global pandemic revolved around waterway transportation. So maybe you're trying to find a way to avoid that. Again, enhance sustainability. Sustainability is a big deal for companies today. Locations that have the availability, energy, or trained workers to do that. Wind energy is one. Water supply is another. So those are some of the rationales for going global. So when you think about going global, it takes manufacturing, function, logistics, and all that, and processes. It also involves, and this entails local as well, risk and security. So I just want to kind of cover risk and security and why that is such a big deal in the supply chain. So here is a graph that shows the cybersecurity as a percentage of IT spend among US and European companies. So in essence, between us and Europe, we're spending close to 22% of our global spending. Here, let me get this on IT and cybersecurity. Why? Well, it just happened to me yesterday. I just had to cancel my card. I happened to use my card with Apple Pay, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I like the convenience, but with the convenience comes risk. And I would say it's probably the fourth time this has happened to me where somebody gets a hold of my card and they decide to go rogue. But we as customers, we deem this to be very important. Some of these breaches have shot the total supply chain down. For example, Maersk had a supply chain breach. I put a supply chain breach in the YouTube for optional that you could look at that video for a minute. And I mean, it happens. It happens regularly. Target was targeted from a supply chain breach. So how are companies? This is a big deal, and they need to pay attention to this. And in your case with Amazon this week, or next week, think about this. I mean, what if Amazon had a security breach and stopped operations? Look at Southwest and what happened over. It wasn't even security. It was just their infrastructure and their technology was aging, and they just completely fell that week. So here's some more interesting statistics. Annual number of entities impacted in supply chain cyber attacks in the United States. Look at that, 1,743 incidents. Look at the jump. Well, that's really not a good. I'll try that again. But I mean, it's growing, and people are finding ways to get exposure to tapping into these supply chains. And if it shuts down your supply chain and you breach companies' data, I mean, it becomes a huge problem. And then, how do you fix it? So the biggest concern for any supply chain manager today is how do you avoid it? So here's the annual number of data compromises and individuals impacted in the United States. You can see the number of individuals in gray here. You can see that the data compromises here in blue, and you can see the number of records exposed. So again, just showing some of these facts shows that this is a big deal within the supply chain. However, let's look at the industries, right? So supply chain would be manufacturing, right here. That's one, right? Transportation, right here. Retail. Okay, so just in those three, I didn't pull the whole thing here. As you can see, healthcare is one, but healthcare has its own supply chain, right? But it's growing. It's infiltrating the supply chain, so you have to be able to protect against this. So what are the dimensions of supply chain risk? How does it affect you and your supply chain? Well, think about it. When we think about, the map with the materials that go into all the suppliers, that goes into operations and production, that goes into the logistical processes to get the products there, to the distributors, warehouses, wholesalers, to the customer. Supplier code of conduct. For example, you rely on a supplier that supplies packaging for your bottle of water. Okay? And let's say they were caught with employing minors. That's supplier code of conduct risk for you. Do you continue to use them? No, because it affects your brand. So anything related to a supplier, high audit risks, if they get audited, those types of things can happen from a performance perspective, delivery, quality. This happens a lot in the private label, private brand industry. So when you go to Walmart and you see Sam's Choice or what's the other one? Target has Up and Up. And every retailer has private brands, right? Even 7-Eleven had its own brand. Most of the time, if not all the time, but most of the time, they're manufactured with another, the prime manufacturer. That these brands don't go out. Walmart, the private brands don't go out and manufacture their own products. They, in essence, use that manufacturer who's manufacturing it to make it. But it's for whatever reason, they put their own spin on it. Well, quality gets affected, right? So let's say you rely on that manufacturer, whomever it is. There are some manufacturers branded like Frito-Lay that will never do private label, but most of them do share, right? So whoever does a certain product may also make this product. That quality could be affected. Capacity constraints. Let's say their brand takes off. They can say, well, unless you have it under contract, they can say, well, you're going to the bottom of the list. Environmental events, natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, labor disruptions, unions, okay? Geopolitical risks, trade barriers, duties and tariffs, pandemics. Until COVID, we really didn't have pandemics on this list, but now, it has shown all of us the infringement that it has had on supply chains, terrorisms, fires, financial. Public companies can have financial risks. Let's say you're a company that just goes out of business. That's a problem. private companies, payment changes, bankruptcy, ownership, public press releases, and then market segmentation, packaging, natural resources can be affected. So if you think about all of these dimensions of supply chain, and you think about risk in the supply chain, and if I go back to that original slide, risk comes from not only technology and cyber attacks, but it also comes into play with all of these, with these 5 factors. And when you think about global supply chains, how do they minimize this risk? And that is what I want you to think about. How do they work on? What are the internal processes and the internal employees, and what do they rely on to avoid these risks? That concludes Module 7. Thank you.